Welcome to my long and exhausting binge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Since I don't want to completely ruin my life by binging 29 movies at one time, I've decided to divide it up for myself by ranking the MCU by phases, starting with Phase 1, which is from 2008's Iron Man to 2012's Marvel's The Avengers. Yeah, that's what it's officially called. It's a grand total of 6 movies, so sit back and get ready to dive deep, or I guess shallow since this is just Phase 1, into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This movie feels very disconnected from the MCU, and I don't say that just because the actor isn't Mark Ruffalo, or because the movie isn't technically owned by Disney so it's not even on Disney Plus, or because the movie doesn't even have an end credits scene, but because nothing from this movie really matters in the grand scheme of the MCU. None of the characters beyond Bruce return in a significant way in any future movies, and when Bruce does return, it's a brand new actor who reinvents Bruce's character completely. Bruce in this movie is a completely different Bruce than in the Avengers and every movie after that. The only reason to watch this movie would be because of the origin of how the Hulk became the Hulk, but even that I feel like gets explained pretty adequately in the future movies. Maybe it's too soon in my MCU binge watch for me to conclude this, but The Incredible Hulk easily feels like the most skippable MCU film. Besides like 1 or 2 cool chase scenes, you'd probably be better missing out on this movie considering the end quickly boils down to the good green monster fights the motivationless evil gray monster. This is probably gonna be a pretty hot take that I get in trouble for, but like, bro, this movie is so freaking lame. The pace is slow, the characters are okay, and the story is only mildly interesting. When a majority of the MCU takes place in the present, it's a little hard for me to care about what the MCU's version of World War II is. And like, again, this is gonna get everyone mad at me, but Steve Rogers in this movie is really freaking boring. He doesn't go through any arc. From start to finish, he is the nice boy who wants to serve his country and fight the Nazis. You know, like literally every single other patriotic American in the 40s. He doesn't learn anything because he's already the perfect character at the beginning. They made a joke at the beginning about how Steve is bad at talking to girls, and by the end of this movie, dude still can barely talk to girls properly. How do you expect him to go through a legit arc? He doesn't grow as a character. Well, okay, unless you mean physically, but even with that, it was just a stroke of luck that they just so happened to choose this random dude to be the super soldier. Like, it could have been anyone who was patriotic but not big and strong like the other soldiers, but they chose him just because he happened to be at the right place at the right time. Thankfully, Steve Rogers becomes a better character throughout the newer movies, but like, I feel like barely anyone talks about just how shallow of a character he is in this movie. Oh, also, any MCU movie that has a trailer for the next movie as its end credits is immediately marked down 1 point for me. Okay, time for a positive review. Iron Man 2 is a movie that succeeds mainly due to the successes of the first movie. All the characters are back and they're all just as hilarious and awesome as they were in the first movie. The plot of Tony poisoning himself was pretty interesting, and I loved how they linked it back to the Avengers Initiative with Nick Fury. One thing that kinda shocked me though is that they somehow managed to make the villain from Iron Man 2 even more lame than the villain from Iron Man 1. We went from dude who's willing to assassinate his friend to become CEO to dude who's too dumb to realize that he's being played by a terrorist. That being said, this movie was for the most part enjoyable, but nothing too special. As a kid, Thor was my favorite superhero for a long time because of this movie, but now I realize that this movie is really cool for everything but Thor's character. Well, okay, I liked his interactions with his friends from Earth and how he had to prove his worthiness by being banished and everything, but at the beginning of the movie, I couldn't help but cringe at some of his lines. Like, he's just so childish for being played by someone like Chris Hemsworth.
You are an old man and a fool!
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no.
On the other hand, I freaking love everything surrounding Loki. This movie isn't even his peak, and he's already established himself as insanely unpredictable and just broken inside. He's just such an incredibly well-written villain, and by far Marvel's best up to this point. Screw it, he's Marvel's only well-written villain in Phase 1. Thor as a character definitely gets much better after this, but this was kind of a cringy introduction to him. When I first saw this movie in 2012, my 9-year-old brain was convinced that there was no way Marvel could do any better than this. This movie is iconic to cinematic universe movies all around, but not just because it brought all of the characters together, but because it did it in a way that was super exciting to watch start to finish. They took everything good from the previous 5 movies and made a banger out of it. Even if this movie can't provide all the interesting character arcs that the other movies provided, it still made sure to entertain us with what almost felt like a video game recruitment quest, as we watched them recruit Black Widow, the Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, and Hawkeye into this weird but oddly sentimental family of superheroes ready to fight this super crazy sociopath. Let me say it again, this movie is iconic, but it's not even the best movie in Phase 1 of the MCU, which leads us to number 1. Wow, what an incredible way to begin what eventually became a one-of-a-kind franchise to entertain people for decades. Right off the bat, Tony Stark's character is beautifully developed through perfect dialogue. His character arc when he gets stuck in the cave is perfectly set up by having him sympathize with the one character who's willing to help him. He quickly becomes a likable character by doing what everyone knows is the right thing and just being super interesting to watch on screen. Never once is this movie boring. Its action and story are equally entertaining. It definitely doesn't feel like a regular MCU film. It feels more like a film that's securely set in the time period of 2008 without it feeling dated. That being said, it was pretty freaking cliche for 2008 to have Middle Eastern terrorists be the villains of this movie. Oh, until this one dude turns into the villain. But like, his motivations, I feel like, were not very great from the start. Like, sure, maybe he wants to be CEO and he really likes money so badly, but why is he willing to go to these extreme lengths to get there? I don't know, but either way, this movie knew what it was doing and was written masterfully. I think the best part about doing the rankings by phases is that I haven't even gotten to the movies that I know are going to be my favorite yet. So sit tight for my upcoming videos in this series where I rank Phase 2, Phase 3, and yes, even Phase 4 since it's going to complete by the end of this year. So make sure to go subscribe so you don't miss out on all this exciting content. Until then, I'll see ya in Radiator Springs.